Last week, I shared with you that I couldn't find any Halloween decorations that I liked here in Ecuador, but I did find a white nutcracker that I thought was the perfect candidate for a Halloween themed creative makeover. So today, I want to share with you how I transformed it and how it looks now. Let's get creative. Here's my little victim, and at first I wanted to keep the process so simple, so I just took it out of the box and I started painting it with my acrylic markers. I started by painting the legs purple and then using black for the boots and all of the other areas I thought I wanted to be black then, like the details on the uniform and the belt and all of that. But when I was painting the crown black, I ran into the first inconvenience of using my paint markers for this makeover, and it was that I couldn't fit them into the small crevices between the crown and that round part that I don't know what it's called. So I decided to get some acrylic black paint and a thin brush and filled the area getting the paint wet so it will slip into the crevices. Then I also painted the mechanism in the back with normal acrylic paint, and I realized even with my tiniest brushes, there were some crevices and areas that I wasn't going to be able to reach and it would still look white. So I just took the nutcracker outside and spray painted black along with other things I was using for Halloween decor this year. While the nutcracker dried outside, I grabbed one of my sketchbooks, went into the living room, and I quickly doodled my idea for what it could look like after the transformation because I wanted to turn it into a witch. With the sketch done, I was back to my desk with an all black nutcracker now, and I also grabbed a few things from my weird miscellaneous craft drawer that I thought I could use in this transformation. Everything was ready for me to start painting again. By now, if you've seen more of my videos, you know I absolutely love paint markers, so I tried to use those first. But of course, I quickly realized that on top of the black paint, I would need to do so many layers of them to get an even color. So I ended up just getting more craft paints out and started painting on top, even though I knew these paints leave a texture. As I paint, I want to take a minute to explain why there are not that many Halloween decorations here in Ecuador. Because the thing is, although we have slowly started to incorporate Halloween because it's so much fun, it's not a holiday that's ours. And I have to be honest, for this video, I actually Googled why Halloween is celebrated because even though I lived in the United States for a couple of years, I wasn't clear on that either. So, turns out, in case someone else doesn't know, like I didn't, that Halloween comes from an ancient Celtic tradition. The Celtic people were native to Central Europe, and they believed that one night a year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became thinner, so they had ceremonies to keep the dead away from coming back into our world. In fact, let me just share with you exactly what Google explained to me with its AI summary. It said, Halloween is celebrated today due to a blend of ancient Celtic and Christian traditions and modern secular customs. Its origins lie in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, which marked the end of the summer and the thinning of the veil between the living and the dead, prompting practices like bonfires and costumes to ward off spirits. When the Christian Church designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, All Hallows' Day, the evening before became All Hallows' Eve, or Halloween, and incorporated some of the old customs which evolved into today's traditions of costumes, trick-or-treating, and spooky themes. Okay, so now we both know more about Halloween, what it means, and I'll tell you more about why I think we don't celebrate it as widely here in Ecuador. But before that, let me catch you up with what I've been doing to the nutcracker because I just painted everything with the colors I chose for the witch, but I had to go over every area 2 or 3 times to get a nice, opaque, even finish. I also kept adjusting my painting job using a tiny brush to try to fix any mistakes I could have made. It's just so crazy how much you have to go back and forth fixing little things when you're working on a 3D object. It's a lot of time. I helped everything dry with the heat gun, and then I kept adjusting things until it was finally time to add the details with my paint markers. Yay! I started by painting rosy cheeks on top of the witch's face because I want her to be like a nice, cute witch, and that's why I chose a light lavender for her skin color. And then I added more details to make the design more intricate and more mine by first starting to draw a spider web pattern on her sleeves. Probably complicating my life more than I needed to, but that's what I decided to do. So, as I do that, let me go back to my story explaining why we don't really celebrate Halloween and how it's just a holiday some people, like myself, have chosen to do because it's so much fun. I mean, some malls or public places have Halloween celebrations here to attract customers and kids, who want candy. But you won't see houses decorated driving around the city at all. The only place you'll see decorated houses are in gated communities, especially the most affluent ones do have trick or treating events, and they'll go all out decorating their houses, like all out, just like in the States. But you need to get an invitation from a resident to go trick or treating there. So, okay, why then? Well, obviously, in Latin America, the roots to our culture are different. We did not get the same migration of people with Celtic backgrounds. And it's only with globalization and the world becoming, in a way, small that things like Halloween have come to countries like mine. Also, in November 2nd, we celebrate the Day of the Dead. And it's not the same as they do in Mexico because, again, different countries, different cultures, but it's simply a day where traditionally people will visit the tombstones and graveyards of their loved ones to give them maintenance, make it pretty, clean them up, leave flowers. And after that, you go back and spend the day with your family, remembering those who are gone. We don't do the altars or like the extreme decorations or costumes like they do in Mexico, but we do have our own traditional food, which I'll get more into later because now I want to go back to my witch. So I finished the spider webs and then I did the scariest part of the design, which was drawing a crisscross pattern on her legs to make her look like she's wearing fishnet stockings. Painting diagonal lines on a 3D object like a cylinder or a cone, if you've ever painted one, is super scary because it's really hard to get them to match up, especially when it's hard to reach in the areas where you need to draw, like it was on my witch. But I managed. It's not perfect. It's full of mistakes, but I think it looks okay. And all of the mistakes can be just runs on her stockings. It's been a while since I heard anyone use that phrase, runs on her stockings. Moving along with the same marker, I drew her eyes with very tiny eyelashes, and then her mouth, which of course needed to match the opening for the nutcracker mouth. That made it weird, but it's fun. I also gave her a very witchy beauty mark on her chin and made her lips purple just a little bit darker than her face. Kept touching up some things here and there, and I decided the stick of her scepter was a little bit too light, so I changed it into a darker brown. Then the last step with painting, I wanted to change her boots a little bit because I wanted them to look more like combat boots. She's so modern. So I tried drawing the holes where the laces would go through, but once I drew the lacing on top, it looked weird. It doesn't look neat, but I think it gets the message across and it ties her outfit together, so I just let it be. Before moving to our next step, which is gluing stuff on her, I gave the entire paint job a protective layer of spray varnish so that I wouldn't get any scrapes or anything on this painting that I worked so hard on. While the varnish dried, I cut some thin strips of the foam sheets I had in preparation to move forward. Once it was dried, I was ready to use the glue gun, so I started by gluing some of the strips I cut around its head to give it a new hairstyle. And while I do this, let me go back on how we celebrate the Day of the Dead here in Ecuador. Like I was saying, it's more of a day to spend with family, go visit your loved ones if they're gone, in their resting places, and then share with family or friends. And what we eat is a drink called colada morada, and we eat guaguas de pan. So, colada morada is a drink made out of berries and other fruits from the Andean region. It's sweet and thick, and it's so comforting and warm, and it's so delicious, so good. And then we pair that with the sweet bread that is shaped in the form of a swaddled baby. I will explain why we have these foods, but first, jumping back to the process of transforming the nutcracker, I had a little bit of tulle fabric left over from cutting a cape my daughter and I got to get dressed up in Halloween because, like I said, we do like celebrating. And this year, if you saw my posts on Instagram, I had a few of my closest friends to be here for a pre birthday witches brew. So I decided to take that leftover fabric and I glued it around her waist to create a little tutu, which I was doing very carefully using the aid of my X-Acto knife, since I've gotten burnt more times than I can count gluing tulle with a glue gun. It's like, because of all the holes, it's bad. Well, but back to my traditions and me narrating what we do. So in October and November, the rain season starts here in the Andes Mountains, and that season aligned with the planting of the crops for the indigenous people in this area. So they had celebrations of the beginning and ending of the circles of life. So life and death, right? And part of their celebrations was taking out their mummified relatives, like the people they buried in the shapes of mummies, and they took them out so they could receive sunlight and also the blessing of the first drops of rain of the season. And part of their rituals, aside from bringing out mummies, was drinking llama blood. Yeah, llama blood. You heard that right. Because llamas were sacred animals to them, and they also took fruits and stuff to the tombstones where the mummies were, right? So, but of course, here in Latin America, we were conquered by the Spaniards, and with their arrival, these ancient traditions were considered barbaric. And once the Catholic Church came in, they were thought as profane and not pure. So they had to stop, but the indigenous people adjusted by creating the red drink made of berries that we have now to replace the blood of the llamas, thank God. And they created these mummies with bread. So that's why we have the swaddled babies now, to represent loved ones. Of course, with time, things have changed even more. The drink is now super sweet and super yummy. And the mummies, like I said, they now are guaguas, with it, which is the Quichua word that translates to baby. And now they're swaddled babies that are filled with Nutella. Yeah, globalization. There's globalization for you, and you can get this bread for as little as $1, but fancy places sell them for like $7, which is insane. Anyhow, I hope learning about how we celebrate in Ecuador was interesting to you. And on a side note, Halloween always falls on a long holiday weekend for us, because November 2nd, the Day of the Dead, is a bank holiday, but November 3rd is also a bank holiday because we celebrate the foundation of one of our main cities, which means usually the government just aligns the holidays with a weekend, and we have a long weekend next to Halloween. So as you watch this, I'm already probably driving to the beach to spend the long weekend there. And if you want to know more about that, I'll probably post something in my stories. Well, okay, enough with that. Back to the witch. Like you saw, I trimmed her skirt to make it look nicer, and I added a piece of black foam to the waist to polish everything. Then I started working on the scepter because I'm turning it into a broom. I'm using brown paper for this, which I cut into a fringe, and I wrapped it around the stick and secured it with hot glue. Then I used a little bit of twine to make it look like a broom. With everything glued on, it was time to move to the third part of this makeover, which is modeling things with clay. The first thing I wanted to do was turn the top of the scepter into a claw. So I used some black foam clay and I started to put it on top. It wasn't staying put, so I had to take it off, sand the wood off, sand the black paint off, and add a little bit of white glue. Then I went back in with the clay. Because of the existing structure underneath, my bird is a little bit odd shaped, but I think once I added the wings and I played around with it a little bit, you can totally tell this is supposed to be a crow. Can you? Yeah. Then I also wanted to give my witch a hat. But I realized I did not have enough black foam clay to create one. So instead of running out to the store to get some clay, I thought I could paint this green clay I had with acrylic black paint. So I added paint to the clay and the color was changing, but it definitely was not becoming black. And I added more and more paint and mixed, and all that I achieved was turning that bright neon green to a muted olive green, which honestly I decided worked with my color scheme and I was just going to use instead of going to the store. So I started by adding clay to the top of the crown because once I started, I decided I wanted that black crown to stay in honor of the nutcracker this once was, and have it just be like on top of the hat. Like, she's a witch, but she's a queen, and she wants to use both her hat and her crown. Yeah, why not? I can honestly relate to that. The day my friends came, I couldn't choose between wearing my hooded cape or a hat. I love them both. So once I was happy with how I modeled the witch's hat on top, I thought I would add one extra tiny detail. So I put a little dab of glue on top of her broom and I tied a green ribbon around it because this witch, she's extra. She's serving, she's beautiful, she likes all of the accessories, and she likes her broom to be cute too. And yeah, that was it. This is how it turned out. She's now part of my Halloween decoration, and I really love this creative transformation. And I really like having the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the traditions in my country. I hope you have a very fun and safe Halloween today, and that I'll see you next Friday with a brand new video because, yay, today I posted on Friday. Have the most wonderful day. Bye.